It would be continue the same practices that you previously were. You didn't have photos taken with your dealer. Maybe don't have photos taken outside of the dispensary. You didn't show up to work blatantly high. Don't show up to work blatantly high now that it's recreationally legal. You know, don't talk about your stoner escapades at work. You know, it's still something that an employee can be terminated over. And the law is pretty clear that if you are terminated for failing a drug test, you're going to be considered to be terminated with what's called just cause for unemployment purposes.
That's really important too, because marijuana stays in your system longer than alcohol does. So if you are drug tested, beware.
Right, exactly. How long it stays in your system can depend on several factors, but it could be up to a month. So of course, you drink over the weekend and your employer can't tell that by a test, if something happens during the week. Okiishi says it still doesn't matter when you use it. If it's readable on a drug test, they can legally fire you because of it. He says there are drug tests that don't test for weed, but he doesn't expect many companies to change their policies on that either.
It's going to be really industry to industry, I think. I wouldn't expect too much movement, though. I think companies will continue to maintain a zero tolerance policy. I think they will continue to retain the right to conduct random drug tests. How often are those tests issued? To be determined. But there are incentives offered, I think, by the Bureau of Workers' Comp and under federal law to have these programs in place for employers.
So overall, he says if someone gets fired because for weed, this recreational law in Ohio does not protect them, and as an attorney, there's not much he can do to defend them if it were to go to court.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if more places of employment test more regularly, I guess. I think that was an important story to point out to people, that just because it's legal doesn't mean you can do it.
And something we've been talking about in the newsroom today is some people don't even know if their employer does test for weed, because he mentioned that there are those tests that only test for some hard stuff and not weed. So how are you supposed to know? And I asked him, I was like, how do you bring up that conversation with your employer? He was like, it is awkward, and it kind of gives you away if they don't want you to be, using marijuana.
I'm surprised we're not hearing more companies, especially big ones in town, that they've sent out a memo saying this is our position, because I bet we're going to start to hear that.
Right. And Megan Mongello did a story in our 5 o'clock show talking a little bit more about the transportation side. Of course, Metro, they have had a policy, no substance at all, no substance use policy, and there's some federal regulations as well. So a lot of people know their policies, especially if you work for some federal companies, but for some of the smaller ones, you may not know kind of where your company stands on that. So it's important to try to figure that out. Study up if you can. Look at your handbooks.
So much, Chelsea. We appreciate that. Well, you can find a list of dispensaries that are selling recreational marijuana along with other information on our website, local12.com.
From breaking news to feel-good stories, Local 12 has it all. Tap subscribe and click the links for more content like this.